80,000 years ago, humanity was trying to survive in a wild world when it discovered its greatest power, fire. However, primitive humans did not yet know how to create it and needed luck to find this powerful element of nature. At that moment in history, a tribe of archaic Homo sapiens, called Ulam, had found a small flame in their territories. To keep it lit, they kept it in a lamp made of bones and blew on it whenever it was about to go out. However, one morning, the warriors Nao and Amukar smell something unfamiliar around the cave. Shortly after, while the women of Ulam are bathing in the lake, the Wagabu tribe, made up of hostile Neanderthals, appears and launches an attack on the group. Hearing the women's screams, Nao and the other warriors go to see what is happening, when they are hit by a landslide. Soon after, the Neanderthals appear at the cave entrance and an intense battle between the two species begins. Using stones and spears, the people of Ulam try to defend themselves, but their enemy is stronger than they expected. In the midst of the fight, one of the Neanderthals goes to attack Nao, but he ends up burning his foot in the fire, and the warrior fights back, hitting the tip of the spear straight into his neck. Despite this, the Neanderthals gain the upper hand, until finally, they expel the people of Ulam from their cave. The survivors flee into the forest, where they are pursued by a pack of wolves, but they soon give up and feed on the bodies left over from the battle. After a difficult escape, Nao and the others take refuge in the middle of a pond, but it is only a matter of time before cold and hunger take over. All seems lost, but then another native appears, bringing with him the lamp he managed to recover from the cave. The problem is that when he tries to cross the lake, the madman ends up sinking into the water, extinguishing the flame. Nao does his best to rekindle it using tree branches and his breath, but to no avail, and now the Ulam tribe is completely defenseless. The next morning, the natives suffer from the intense cold, until one of the women takes the lamp and gives it to Nao. With this gesture, the warrior understands that he needs to recover the fire somehow, and so the tribe's elder appoints him to this quest. Other warriors want to go with him, but the elder chooses Amukar and Ga to accompany Nao. Finally, the three warriors begin their journey crossing the lake, taking with them only their fur coats and spears to face the unknown dangers of the world. Over the days, the trio crosses a mountainous valley and enters the forest, where they hear the sound of an animal in the distance. Nao lets out a cry, hoping the animal will reveal itself, but all he hears is the echo of his voice and no sign of fire nearby. The three then continue their journey until they reach an open field, which appears to be uninhabited. However, they soon smell an animal nearby, and when they look back, they come face to face with a pair of the dreaded saber-toothed tigers. Without hesitation, the predators advance toward the group, who run for their lives until they find a small tree in their path. The trio quickly climbs it, but the saber-toothed tigers surround the area, forcing the group to stay in the tree all night. At dawn, the predators remain on the lookout and the trio of warriors have to settle for eating the leaves of the tree to stave off their hunger. Still, hunger and exhaustion take over the three, with Amukar falling asleep and collapsing on the branch. The three panic, but soon realize that the pair of tigers has left and the path is clear again. They then go out in search of food, and Amukar finds a bird's nest, where he takes several eggs to eat. Ga asks him to share, but his companion refuses and the two begin to fight, breaking the rest of the eggs. Meanwhile, Nao sees traces of smoke in the distance, and hoping to find fire, the warrior runs to take a closer look. As he approaches, he sees an unknown people crossing the valley and follows them from a distance. Upon entering the forest, the trio finds a fire in the middle of the woods and uses the ashes to cover the body and keep it warm. Among the remains of the fire, they also find animal remains, and Amukar takes a piece to eat. However, Nao also sees nothing less than a human skull, indicating that the tribe seen moments ago is made up of cannibals, known as Zam. Amukar is disgusted and throws all the meat away, with the trio continuing their search for food, when they find vulture chicks nearby. After eating them all, they move on and find the tribe of cannibals resting in a camp in the forest. In addition to them, the trio sees a couple of humans, their bodies painted and hanging from a tree, to serve as a meal for the cannibals. Nao then comes up with a plan, and when dawn breaks, Amukar and Ga begin to shout around the camp to attract the Zam. The plan works, and the cannibal warriors chase after them, giving Nao the chance to grab the firewood and bring the fire back. However, as he tries to escape, the strong wind extinguishes the flame, and soon after, one of the cannibals sees the intruder and calls the tribe's leader to face him. Despite the warrior's menacing appearance, Nao is not intimidated and sets out to face him with his spear. The Zam leader arms himself with a staff and tries to attack him, but the weapon gets stuck between the rocks, giving the warrior from Ulam a chance to strike him. With a well-aimed attack, Nao strikes him in the head, knocking the leader unconscious. Even with this victory, Nao is attacked from behind by one of the cannibals, who not only knocks him to the ground but also bites him in a very painful area. In the midst of unbearable pain, the warrior from Ulam picks up a rock and finishes off the enemy with a heavy blow to his head. The battle is over and the young woman who was trapped in the tree manages to free herself and calls her companion to flee. Shortly after, Nao hears the young woman's cries and tries to go after her, but he can barely walk due to his injury. Even so, the warrior picks up another burning log, manages to relight the lamp, and takes it to a hidden place while waiting for his friends to return. Minutes later, Amukar and Ga appear and are happy to see the lamp lit again. However, they are frightened when the young woman with the painted body appears and runs towards them. Believing her to be one of the cannibals, the trio flee as fast as they can back home. However, Nao cannot walk any faster and they have to stop near the lake. Shortly after, the young woman reappears, and upon seeing Nao's condition, she decides to help him and begins to prepare a medicine. Using a mixture of herbs and fruits, she applies the medicine to Nao's wound, which is soon completely healed. Thanks to the help of a young woman named Aika, Nao can continue his journey back home, carrying the fire he has been searching for. Before that, they need to camp for the night, and using the flame inside the lamp, they build a fire. The next day, the group wakes up to screams, and around them appear the survivors of the Zam tribe. They begin to surround Nao and the others, but despite being outnumbered, Amukar is not intimidated and challenges the tribe to battle. Just as the fight is about to begin, the Zam tribe begins to back away, as if they have seen something frightening. Looking back, Nao sees a herd of mammoths, whose mere presence strikes fear into the cannibal tribe. However, the warrior from Ulam is not afraid of the enormous creatures, so he picks some grass and offers it to the leader of the herd. His companions are nervous to see Nao approaching, but the warrior slowly walks toward the mammoth and kneels in an act of respect. In response, the huge animal accepts the gift and returns it with a powerful roar to drive away the rival tribe. Similarly, Amukar and Ga offer grass to the mammoths, and soon the entire herd sides with the Ulam warriors and expels the Zam tribe from there. Faced with this victory, the trio celebrates together with the mammoths, feeling even stronger and more motivated than ever. Later that night, the trio eats a meal in front of the campfire, while Aika tries to get some rest. Suddenly, Amukar begins to approach the young woman, but she rejects him and runs towards Nao. He insists, but Nao puts himself in a fighting stance and tells him to back off, with Amukar having no choice but to obey his leader. Another day passes and the trio continues their journey back, but Aika begins to scream, as if calling them in another direction. Nao believes she is trying to lead them to her village, but they have no time to waste and head in the opposite direction. With no other option, Aika continues to follow them until the group makes another stop to rest. At that moment, Nao is sharpening the tip of his spear when a rock falls from the wall and hits Amukar right on the head. Seeing this, Aika begins to laugh at the man, something none of the three warriors have ever seen anyone do before. Unlike her people, the Ulam tribe has no idea what fun is, which only makes the young woman feel even more out of place. As soon as the trio falls asleep, Aika wakes up and sees a flock of birds flying through the skies. Despite the dangers around her, the young woman misses her group, so she decides to leave. Seconds later, Nao wakes up and, seeing that Aika is not around, goes out to look for her. Having become attached to the young woman, the warrior is enraged to see her leaving and drags his feet across the ground in a gesture of rejection. The group then resumes their journey, but Nao can't stop thinking about Aika. He even returns to the place where he last saw her and lies down on the same grass where Aika was, in an attempt to smell her scent once more. Amukar and Ga do not understand what is happening to their leader and simply wait for him to continue the journey. Shortly after, Nao gets up, but instead of returning home, he takes another path and sets off in search of Aika. After walking for a while, the warrior sees a tent, and fearing that someone is still inside, he throws a spear, but the place is empty. Upon investigating inside, Nao finds a vase with paintings similar to those he saw on Aika's body. The warrior soon realizes that the house belonged to a member of her tribe and continues to search for her, even against the wishes of Amukar and Ga. After hours of searching, his two companions are tired and let Nao continue alone while they rest on top of a hill. Meanwhile, the leader continues his search, when he finds a huge swamp with a village just ahead. Nao believes that Aika is there and tries to cross the swamp, but he ends up falling into quicksand and begins to sink quickly. The warrior does his best to get out of there, but the more he moves, the more his body gets stuck in the sand. He screams for help from his friends, but they are too far away and cannot hear his call. Things only get worse when, suddenly, several spears and stones begin to be thrown in his direction and Nao cannot move. Luckily, the warrior from Ulam is not hit by the spears, but a stone is thrown at his head, knocking him unconscious. Shortly after, Aika reappears and asks her people, the Ivica tribe, to end the attack and take Nao to the village. The young woman is happy to see the warrior again, but her people are interested in the intruder and won't let her approach him. Unlike the cannibals of Zam, the Ivica village is more welcoming and offers Nao not only shelter but also plenty of food. Finally, the tribe leader sends one of the women to his tent, as he wants to make his people stronger through interbreeding. Meanwhile, Aika watches sadly from a distance, forced to respect the traditions of her people. Later, while everyone is asleep, the young woman enters Nao's house and tries to sleep beside him, but this act is seen as disrespectful and the tribe leader expels her, throwing stones at her. The next morning, after this rite of passage, Nao is taken to a cave by one of the natives. There, he pulls out some pieces of plant and places them on top of a piece of wood, until finally, using a stick, he begins to spin it with the strength of his hands. Through repetitive movements, the wood begins to heat up and Nao observes a small amount of smoke coming out of it. Then, the native takes the heated piece, places it in the middle of some straw, and when he blows on it, the flame begins to grow stronger and stronger. Finally, the native manages to light the flame and places it on top of the straw, creating fire all by himself. Faced with this discovery, Nao can barely contain his excitement and realizes that he no longer needs to search for fire, because now he has learned how to create it. The next day, a group of Ivica boys run toward the quicksand. There, they find Amukar and Ga, who also fell into the trap while looking for Nao, and the boys begin to laugh at the two madmen. Shortly after, they are taken to the village, and Nao goes to see what is happening, now with his body painted and as part of the Ivica tribe. Upon seeing his two companions, instead of helping them, he mocks them along with the rest of the group, which upsets Amukar. Hours later, while everyone is resting, he and Ga decide to leave, but first they collect the weapons created by the Ivica. Then they run to Nao's house, who is still sleeping and refuses to leave, but Amukar punches him and takes him by force. Nearby, Aika watches the group as they try to leave the village by crossing the swamp. However, seeing that they are heading towards quicksand, the young woman tells them to leave and shows them the safe way to the exit. Because of her act of disrespect, Aika was expelled from the tribe and she decides to go with the trio to their tribe. On the way, the group stops to rest, with Nao regaining consciousness and being happy to see young Aika again. At that moment, Amukar sees Ga sleeping next to the tree and decides to play a joke on him. Just as happened to him days ago, the warrior drops a rock right on his colleague's head, who wakes up scared and whimpering in pain. Seeing this, not only Aika, but everyone finds the situation funny, and for the first time, the warriors of Ulam manage to have fun. Sometime later, heavy rain begins to fall, and Nao takes the opportunity to wash all the paint off his body. However, the rain gets stronger and stronger and the warrior is overcome by the cold, but Aika offers to warm him up. The two get closer and have a romantic moment, while Amukar and Ga try to look away, uncomfortable with the situation. Another day passes and the group prepares to continue their journey, while Aika goes to the lake to fetch some water. Suddenly, she sees a group of unknown men armed with spears and runs scared to Nao, saying that there are invaders in the region. He then leaves with Amukar to see who is approaching and tells Aika and Ga to hide. The two obey and run to hide in a cave, where they find a bear cub inside. Unfortunately for Ga, the mother bear appears shortly after and attacks him from behind with her sharp teeth and claws. Desperate, Aika runs away to get help, while Ga tries to resist the huge animal, which leaves him seriously injured. Finally, Aika finds Nao and Amukar and calls them to help her companion before it's too late. They then rush to the aid of their friend, who, even without strength, manages to attack the bear and runs towards the cave exit. However, the huge animal does not give up and bites his foot, trying to pull him back inside. With great effort, Ga strikes the bear and manages to escape, but outside, he slips and falls to the ground unconscious. Finally, Amukar and Nao arrive at the scene, only to find their companion unconscious and wounded. They rush to take him back to their people to be cared for, but halfway there, they encounter other Ulam warriors. Nao then shows them the lamp, saying that he has finally found fire and can save the entire tribe. However, the rival warriors have other plans and intend to take the flame for themselves and create a new tribe. Armed with spears and mallets, the warriors surround Nao and the others, who try to defend themselves, but their opponents outnumber them. Aika then has an idea and tells Nao and Amukar to leave the fire behind and move away from their enemies. Although confused, Nao obeys and leaves the lamp on a rock and immediately moves away. The rival warriors do not understand what is happening, but they do not intend to leave without a fight and begin throwing spears at Nao and the others. The problem is that their weapons are ineffective at long range and fail to hit their targets. Aika had expected this, so she teaches Nao and Amukar how to use the spears they took from the Evikas, equipped with a primitive type of launcher. Without much effort, the two warriors throw the spears, which reach a greater distance and manage to hit their targets. With two of them defeated, it's time to finish off the leader, and Nao throws a spear at his leg, followed by Amukar, who hits his opponent right in the heart. Thanks to Ika's strategy, Nao and Amukar win the battle and can finally end their long journey. Minutes later, they finally reunite with Yulam's tribe, and Nao raises the lamp, showing that the tribe finally has fire back on their side. He then hands the lamp to the people, who are very happy to see the flame again. However, just as before, the same man who dropped the lamp into the lake ends up slipping with it into the water, causing the fire to go out once again. The survivors despair, believing that all their efforts have been in vain. However, thanks to what he learned during his long journey, Nao gathers his entire tribe and says that it is possible to create fire on his own. Everyone is curious and skeptical, but the warrior decides to prove that he is telling the truth. So, placing a piece of wood on the ground and spinning a stick in repetitive movements, he tries to rekindle the flame, but nothing happens. The group is about to lose hope when Aika tells Nao to stop and decides to show them how it's done. She then spins the stick even harder and faster, and in a few seconds, a small amount of smoke begins to rise from the piece of wood. Faced with this incredible discovery, the Yulam tribe celebrates that the fire has returned, and everyone gathers around a huge bonfire. Months passed, and the group managed to return to their former home, with everyone learning the technique of creating fire. At dusk, Nao, now the leader of the Yulam tribe, gazes at the full moon when Aika appears and joins her companion. He embraces her and caresses her belly, indicating that the couple is awaiting the arrival of their first child. Thanks to the courage of Nao and his companions, the Yulam tribe managed to survive the wilderness. Not only that, but the discovery of fire helped humanity dominate the planet and perpetuate its existence for many generations. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.